Well, welcome to the foundation. It's great to have you all here. It's a chance to share ideas and share our commitment to work in this area. You know, the comparison between malaria and higher education is a pretty interesting one. And in some ways, I'll tell you, malaria is easier. What are we trying to get done in malaria? We're trying to make sure that 1 million children a year who die of malaria no longer die. And about 4 million children are damaged by cerebral malaria, so they're never able to learn, never able to become literate or do much in the world. And in some ways, that's an even greater burden than the deaths that take place. And so we know exactly what success looks like. We know what partial success looks like. We know what total success looks like. And we also have a pretty clear view of what our tools will be. They will be drugs that can be trialed. There'll be vaccines that can be trialed. And we have very sophisticated models using supercomputers and advanced techniques that let us take various interventions, like a drug that's a certain amount effective, bed nets that have certain coverage level of vaccines and characteristics. And we can look at so much better than others. How do you transfer those skills? What causes kids to be motivated? Why do some kids have an aspiration to do something? What happens in between the time they have the aspiration and they fail to achieve that aspiration? The numbers, the understanding, and even the question of, hey, if a kid goes to college, do they know more when they're done? So there's people who do things like the CLA that, maybe not. One guy doing a little thing, what did he spend? A few million. The guy who criticized him spent a few thousand. The notion of, if you took the quality of education, say, take higher ed or take your 12, whichever you want, say, okay, how good was it in 1960? How good was it in 1980? How good was it in 2000? Has it really progressed? And if it's progressed, what is your metric of that? Is it cost per student educated? Is that going down? Is it the quality of the education that, oh my God, those people went to college in 1960, those poor people. I mean, they had chalkboards and textbooks, and they had to wait till the teacher came into the class. What is it that we've done that's different? There are domains where our seriousness about measuring and our understanding are fairly deep. Certainly in the technology field, or the pharmaceutical field for rich world diseases, you spend on the order of 15 to 20% of everything that gets spent goes into funding R&D. That's very high. That's the highest there is. But it's a massive amount of R&D. And nobody could ever say that the drug industry in 1960 bared any resemblance to 1980 to 2000. That's because of all that R&D. Our biological understanding. How do you make a product, make it safe? What's its efficacy? What is that doing for heart disease? That is a numerical gain. And yet, education in a sense is more important than these other things. In fact, if you had to say, if one part of the economy, its productivity could be improved, you get to pick one thing, and you get some nice follow-on benefit, you might think, oh, material science, that's pretty cool. I'll make steel stronger. Or, energy, that's a good thing. People drive around, energy gets you a lot of things. Those would be good choices. But the best choice of all would be improving education, because education, whatever productivity benefit you get there, accrues to every part of the economy. And it even accrues to non-economic type activity, the ability to enjoy, understand the world, be a good citizen, be a good parent or whatever. So, it's the most central thing to all areas of activity where we're trying to improve. And yet, when you say how much is invested in real research, how much is the understanding advancing, not that much. Even measurement about dropouts. Why do these kids choose to go to for-profit institutions and pay, X amount more? What is it that's attractive about that? How are they able to do that? Who's most efficient at doing various things? Can you really break those things out? Anyway, I think we're at a very interesting juncture in time where the importance of doing better on these things, whether it's in the United States or the world at large, is pretty clear. And if you take a goal of a higher percentage of the population being well educated, I'll stay away from college educated or anything that might devalue certain types of degrees, but as educated as they wanted to be in ninth grade, that educated, or even 2/3 that educated, what we achieve is well less than half of that goal. Then it's going to require more capacity. But to the degree that capacity has been created by government funding at the state and federal level, the chance of that largesse scaling as you want to add a substantial number, say 30-35% student years by cutting dropouts, getting people more achievement, there's just no chance that that money's going to show up at the state or federal level. State level is probably flat to down. Federal level, it's probably flat. And so that puts pressure on the system. And then you have all these people saying, okay, you have to do this more efficiently. Well, to do it more efficiently, you really have to understand your costs and your efficiency of how you're doing it today. And efficiency has to have some metric of not only how much did people learn, but some understanding of what the state of that student was coming in. Certainly, if a student is super motivated, they can just buy the textbook and read the textbook. That's less than 1%. But nobody gets that much credit for somebody who's hyper-motivated. They can sign up to your class, they'll get your degree, but that student's very easy. Some students are very, very hard. And so you should have this notion of, who's taking on the top cohort and who's actually getting very good results with those tough cohorts. And so even that basic measurement system, I'd say we're at a pretty basic state, talking that through, and yet that's an element of this. Ideal systems are ones where you can say who's the best at something and just adopt that practice. I referred to a book about steam engines in my annual letter, and one of the key breakthroughs in the steam engine was the ability to measure its energy output. And as soon as you could do that, then two people could change the steam engine, and something that was 3% better would get adopted because they measured the energy output. It wasn't anecdotal. Yeah, I think mine's pretty cool. And so there were over 1,000 innovations on average, which were like 0.1% improvements that led to this factor of 10 improvement in the efficiency of steam engines. So, and you know the name of a few guys, but you don't know all those 1,000 people, and yet the end result of society required all of that contribution coming together. Well, in the area of education, say some university does counseling really, really well. They help people pick careers really, really well. Or one of your teachers explains why you need to know algebra, which seems like mysterious X's and Y's, and they're just super good at doing that. Would that be identified? Would it be? Is there any incentive metric by which it would be made available very broadly? And the answer is, I think only at a very modest level today. And as you know, we're at this juncture where people are hoping technology can do magic things. And certainly the foundation is very optimistic that over, say, a 5 to 10 year period, there will be some truth in that. There's definitely, you take things like developmental math, where you can actually measure the student skill, you can see what the gaps in their knowledge are, you can focus in on the areas, and everybody who comes to post-secondary and isn't very good at math, they're not bad across the board. They're not homogeneous. It's not like teaching first graders math. And so this idea that interactive techniques allow you to identify, okay, nobody really explained why we use these X's. Once you get over that, you're going to be fine. Or maybe fractions, or maybe units of measure, or whatever it is. And so we have glimpses of where adaptive technology that can measure what you're good at, focus in on those things, that can do extremely well in areas like developmental math. For the student who has a reason that they're actually understand why they should want to get through that, hopefully more than just that, hey, that's a requirement that you have to get through. When we think about technology, we're often pretty unclear about what we're trying to improve. After all, technology, in some ways, it can be a substitute for a textbook or complementary. It can be a substitute for a worksheet that you take home and try and do the math problems. If you go to, say, Khan Academy, their math problem generation capability makes, to the degree a student has access to technology, their ability to generate problems just blows away what anybody can do in a handed out worksheet. Because as the student is going through the problem, they can get hints. The system knows that they got hints. The system understands the various mistakes you make and can point out, try simpler problems that really illustrate that conceptual area, can point out 5-minute lectures that would help you understand that thing. And everything you do in that worksheet replacement, any coach that you assign, including your teaching assistant, teacher, friend, whoever, can actually go in and see exactly where you did well, exactly where you had a tough time. And the thing can be calibrated to the areas that are the most needed. So substituting for the worksheet, we're actually getting pretty good at that. Substituting for the lecture. That's a very orthogonal thing from substituting from the worksheet. Can you get lectures that match what your curriculum is, are delivered in a better way? Of course they're not. They're only going to be interactive in a certain sense. And so things like Coursera, Udacity, the whole MOOC world is actually taking on this idea of, can you have good lectures? Right now, it's thousands and thousands of courses. So even take an introductory economics course, and a math course. There are hundreds and hundreds of those being done. What is the end state supposed to look like? Well, eventually it should be more like recorded music, where the fact that everybody thinks they know how to sing, eventually most people had to give up that illusion. And a few people who were particularly talented were given a high budget to get better and have backup crew and have music editing. And they come out with something and they get feedback that's not good enough. Courses are good. You can actually change them and reissue them and make them better and better. And so the idea of how you use interactivity, how you do the lecture. Yes, eventually we should have things that really do challenge the idea of, in any large urban area, 20 different people trying to teach a certain introductory course and do the lecture part. Now that doesn't answer the other part, the study section, where people don't know why they're learning the stuff, how they're confused, where their peers get together. And that's why all these questions about you have the purists who think these things are total substitutes for everything. And then you have the pragmatists who say, no, it's a substitute for some of these things, and let's try it out, let's learn. Particularly at a time when the average quality of these things is quite mixed, and it's quite mixed across the various dimensions of the things it's trying to do. Is it adapted for a particular student type? Does it match the current curriculum that people have, which has been overly specialized? There are differences that over time will actually have to go away in that. And so, we're funding a lot of different technology things. This is a very interesting bootstrap, because the only way you get better is you get people to use these things. So we need open-minded people like yourselves to take this stuff in an appropriate way and try it out. Try it out with different student groups, knowing that it's somewhat imperfect, and there's all these fears that come with this stuff, like, oh, it's replacing certain things. Well, it is supposed to replace certain things. If you like making worksheets, you're in trouble. Khan for math problems. Khan Academy has got you. You are just never going to be as good at sitting there, giving hints, helping out, keeping a record of exactly what went on. That's just not going to happen. Lectures gets to a more sense of what could be possible. So those types of advising systems, student relationship management, whatever they're.
I'm a program officer. I know how difficult this can be. if you really want this environment to embrace failure, how do we really actually step into that? Because that's really hard for, I think, grantees to think about and to put out kind of the learnings and the risks and the knowledge that they gain. So how do we think about that as an ecosystem?
Yeah, I think that's tricky. In our health world, the idea of how you try things out has been, mind-blowingly regulated. And there's this huge sort of do no harm that overrides even opportunities to move innovations through and do things a lot better. In the education field, things aren't quite the same in terms of being life and death, except maybe some of your career. And you hope, we only need about 5% of people to try these things out. And so you'd hope in the field, in terms of people how are evaluated or how they think of their field, you can find in all community college and quarter colleges, you can find that number of people. Now, do you need to get the entire administrative chain on board because they might feel embarrassed if something doesn't go well? That can be very complicated. How much autonomy is there to try out these different experiments? Ideally, there is a bit of a paradox, which is we often want to get large pools involved in the experiments because that means if they do go well, that the opportunity, the proof point is more people would pay attention to, and the opportunity to scale up because other people who are of similar scale look at that and see that's what they're going to be compared against. That makes a big difference. So, the idea of where you do sort of the equivalent of phase 1 versus phase 2 versus phase 3, medical drug terms, you have to, think about those different scaling approaches. But it should be viewed as a trial. It's amazing because people are highly sensitized to this technology. People do, there was a Udacity thing that did get perfect results, but then the later results were somewhat better. It was surprising given how undeveloped these things are and how many parameters there are that people jump on things very quickly and assume that it's going to really prove things. Anything that works at all today is a very good thing because the opportunity to use that signal to improve is so dramatic. And so for a lot of things we're interested in, our commitment to say, okay, if it works, that's not the end of it. We're not just going to try and sell that to everybody in the world. We're going to take it to the next stage of R&D. I think it's very helpful. And educational software often gets trapped. As soon as it gets good enough to sell, the amount of R&D that goes on often drops to near zero. So there's a bit of a market paradox that we should try and avoid. Where competence was proved separately, and you didn't have to go to a law school to take the bar exam. Any way you got that knowledge is okay, which there's a few states that actually do it that way, but mostly they don't. Then it would allow for a bit more activity. Systems where the government picks the providers screws up innovation. Ideally, speaking capitalistically, the consumer should get all the money. The fact that the money goes to institutions is a weird thing because then you're not seeing a true price from that institution. You're seeing, the for-profit guys have to charge. You can put aside their market or anything. They have to charge a very different price. And so their share of the market is unnaturally depressed because you don't have a voucher-type system. Now you can say, oh, well, but because we don't know how to control for quality, I don't want capitalism in this case. That really does divide people, and it's fairly complicated. And you might even say by different types of education that where you can really measure the output super well and determine that students are qualified to go into it super well, and you haven't lied to them about the job availability. There are areas of endeavor where I think it should be wide open, and we should draw in more capacity. We shouldn't regulate it not to happen. But so anyway, if you're starting up a new university. We actually have a few people, like Sri